If you're not good at pursuing goals, you're never going to make it. That's the reason why 90% of any initiative, when you have a strategy that is very well laid out and you know where you want to go, falls on its face because of execution, because you don't have a good execution engine.
Welcome to the Value Factory Podcast, brought to you by OneAccord. We're all about helping businesses thrive and grow through leadership, strategy, and meaningful impact. Now, whether you're a seasoned executive or just starting out, our goal is to provide insights and inspiration to help you navigate your journey. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Value Factory Podcast, presented by OneAccord, and I'm your host, Andrew Ballard. We have a fantastic topic today and a great subject matter expert. And so we're going to dig into the challenge for IT solutions providers in today's complex market. So I'll start by introducing our guest, who successfully founded and sold their own business and worked for almost 2 decades with some amazing companies. Huba Rostonics started his own consulting practice, is now seeking to make a bigger impact by helping founder-led companies transition. And this is the part I'm really excited about. We're going to talk more about it. But helping founder-led companies transition to a management-led team. And so that's a big difference. But we're going to talk about the tool that Huba, who is a principal with OneAccord, uses that's called Oasis. And Oasis is OneAccord's proprietary business operating system. And it really brings more efficiency, more consistent results, and really a higher valuation for the OneAccord clients. And that's what it's all about, is building a higher valuation. So as a principal for OneAccord, Huba leads our IT solutions provider and technology industry practice. Welcome, Huba. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your background before we jump in?
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much for that great introduction. I wanted to get together with you. We have been kind of like chasing each other for a while to talk about this topic. This is a topic that is really close to my heart. I spent about 23 years in the technology industry. And most of the large technology companies do business through what they call, or we call in the technology industry, we call it the channel. Okay. The channel is basically the way you reach the customer. And part of that channel is usually the large systems integrators, but there's also this particular breed of companies called the managed service provider, right? So the managed service provider are those great folks, that come into your office and set up your computer, do different things, right? Take care of your firewall, all those things that you need to operate your business. And they usually are very small companies. Most of them start out with a single owner who is very proficient in technology, and they start growing with that, and they grow with their customers, right? So it's a small business most of the time, right? Some managed service providers reach a size of $100 million or even bigger than that, but it's not the normal situation. Now, there are more than 30,000 managed service providers just in the US. And what's interesting about this is that, just so that you have an idea on how important is this, the technology industry globally, it's about $5 trillion, trillion with a T, okay? And in that industry, 75% of that business flows through some kind of a channel. I'm not saying that it goes through managed service providers, but 75% goes through the channel, and part of that channel is the managed service providers, and these are small businesses, right? So how do you take that, Andrew?
Well, I think that's fantastic. So if 75% of them are going through managed service providers, I'm kind of curious what the other 25% of those channels.
They usually, I mean, 75% is the whole channel,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And there's a small percentage of those, and probably 25% is managed service providers.
Okay.
The others are resellers and systems integrators, like the big, Tata Consulting,
Like
and
VARs?
those guys, Presidio, VARs, right? Even CDW, which is a large, direct marketing organization. So they are basically resellers and integrators,
Excellent.
right? And the other 25% goes direct, right? It's the large technology companies selling directly to enterprises and corporations.
Got
right?
it. Great.
So, but the MSP in particular is a small business, and it has all the challenges that a small business has, right? It's they go through growing pains. They have issues when trying to delegate. They have obviously, sometimes they get strapped for cash flow. All the same issues that any other small business may have, with the specifics that happen in the technology industry.
Right, especially in that professional service provider space.
Absolutely.
A lot of our clients, before they come to OneAccord, are really challenged with managing cash flow. It's kind of a sine wave, and that's very difficult to forecast and work with. So, what should you know about customer success, even if you are not an IT solutions provider? And how does Oasis help kind of navigate all of that?
So the first thing, is this term that it's becoming more and more popularized, but it has also been misunderstood. When we say customer success, what do you hear, Andrew? I'm just curious. What do you think about?
I hear that they've got a good business operating system, consistent. They have SOPs, and that they're structured and organized.
If I tell you our customer success department or our customer success manager is going to get in touch with you, what do you think? You usually think about support, right?
Yes.
It's like, right? Well, there's the disconnect, right? The technology industry, because it's we need people who are proficient with these things and who understand technology. We come from a legacy of having people that support us, right? So we get tech support on the line. That guy that tells you, to turn it off and turn it back again.
Right. And now they're more chat bots than humans.
Right. That's tech support, right? But then we developed a new breed in the industry of a role, which is the customer success manager, and it's a customer success function. And this role has very little to do with tech support. So it's connected, but it's not the same. And what it means, you got to take it literally, where you say it's for the guaranteeing or improving the likelihood of our customers to have success with what we sell them. And this becomes super, super important when you are dealing with a business model where you are selling services and you're selling everything as a service. And I'll try to explain this in a different way, right? So when you, for example, you have your Netflix account, right? And there's 3 months. This is very unlikely that it happens, right? But let's say 3 months go by where you cannot find anything to watch, right? What's going to happen? You're going to eventually cancel your subscription, right? So why? Because you're not being successful at sitting on your couch watching something, right? So that's a very simple example of customer success. So it's in the best interest for Netflix in this case to make you successful in sitting on your couch, right?
Customer retention strategy.
Right. So it's a customer retention strategy, right? And the whole technology industry is in the process of moving. It's very well into the process, but it's still ongoing, of changing the business model to deliver everything as a service. You know, they're the days where we had a cabinet in the back of the office with servers and routers and all kinds of equipment, you know, with blinking LEDs is gone, right? So we just pay a monthly fee and something happens somewhere, right? We don't know what it is. We call it the cloud, and, you know, we come up with some euphemisms. But the main thing is that in that evolution, we need to make sure that our customer is really getting the value out of what we provide them, so that they are successful and they continue to buy our services, right? So this concept can be translated. You know, your question was, what do you need to know about customer success, even if you're not in IT? And is that it translates to any services related business. You know, even for OneAccord, we, you know, when one of our clients stops seeing value in what we deliver to them, we eventually move away, right? We move apart. Right? So it's a constant drift. It's like two boats in a lake, right? Where we're trying, you know, we really need to hold on to each other to keep us together, right? That's the way it works. So my message, let's say that way, for everybody in business is to make a shift in the way they think and think about making their customers successful instead of just themselves being successful in selling customer.
Right. That makes really good sense. And, you know, to that point, I've heard you say on many occasions that you help companies perform and transform. So
that's right.
Talk a little bit about what you mean by that.
Yeah. So the first thing is every company needs to perform, right? It's if you want to keep the lights on, pay salaries, put food on the table, pay the rent, etc., you need to perform. And that's the day-to-day operation. But so I say they have to perform for their here and now, right? But also we are in a world that is changing very rapidly, right? We are changing, it's breakneck speed. And if you don't transform your business for what's coming, or for, you know, what is the next stage, or even for exit, right? Where at OneAccord, we are very much into that space as well, you know, helping owners exit their business. You're not going to make it. So you have to be constantly looking into how do you make sure that you perform for your here and now, and you transform for what's in the future.
Right.
Those are the two motions.
And I'm just going to make one short distinction, or one small distinction, because we have a lot of professional service providers that are part of our audience. And that is what Huba said is 100%. We help prepare them for exit. OneAccord is not a business broker. We partner with business brokers, and they partner with us. If a company is not optimally set up for a good sale, and there's a lot of room to build value, that's where OneAccord comes in and building that value. Absolutely. And then when they're optimal, we hand it over to a business broker like IGA, for instance, or IBA, pardon me, to actually work the transaction.
That's right.
Excellent. So how did you originally, Huba, become interested in management service providers? What kind of put you on that path?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, it's the interest. I used to own my own engineering company. You know, we did mostly industrial automation and things like that, you know, small projects, etc. And we sold it, right? And but at the time when I was in that, you know, when I had that business, I was constantly looking for, you know, what was the gap? Where was my blind spot, right? So, and there were many things that I couldn't figure out, and you know, I could have used some help. I was pretty much alone in what I was doing. You know, that got me, you know, first of all, in the day-to-day struggle of the small business, right? But also I got very much interested in management systems, right? How do you actually structure a company? How should you do things so that they are done the right way and you can grow a business, right? And that's got me into working for some of the largest corporations in the world, so and I learned a lot. I also learned things that you shouldn't do, right? But then I said, well, I learned enough, so how do we apply that to small businesses? And in this case, you mentioned Oasis, right? But even before we go there, just to close the idea of the how a managed service provider and a small business relate, right? It's so I got interested in managed service providers because of my work with large technology companies and leading their channel. Okay, so I worked with managed service providers, or help recruit managed service providers so that they would carry our product, etc., and would help them through the process of delivering our products. And I learned, all the different things that they, I looked at them and I looked at the way we did things, and I saw, there's a gap in there. So as a small company, a managed service provider has the same challenges. We already mentioned this, right? But they also operate in this industry, which has its very particular dynamics. And one of them is that the large technology companies that produce the products and the systems lead the industry. They are the ones who are setting, what is the direction that the industry takes. That's one of the things. And the other piece is that the managed service provider is responsible for delivering services, as you said, professional services, but quality services. So there is this whole discipline that they could use in developing better services organizations, their service level agreements, all these different things, and evolving their services organizations. But they also have to keep up with the technology vendors. The technology is constantly changing. So that's yet another challenge, on top of it. So these two aspects are very, very important. And, in that spirit of performing and transforming, that's when Oasis comes in.
And I want to talk a little bit more about Oasis in a minute. But first, kind of just right to your point, is there a difference between managed service providers and other small businesses? And if the answer is yes, what are those differences?
Well, the difference is what I was saying, right? It's a heavily services oriented organization, but it leverages technology to a large extent. That's their business, right? So they have to constantly keep up with it, right? So they manage things like, your security policies and things like that. So many, for example, own, cyber insurance and things like that, because they at the end of the day, they can be held accountable for that. So that's the biggest difference. It's a very services oriented thing. The quality of what you deliver is going to depend on the people that you have and how you deliver those services. The second one is, how do you keep up with the technology? While you are in this very competitive market where, companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Dell, whatever, they poach away on your talent, right? So it's a very, very competitive thing.
Right.
So managed service providers and any company needs to go through this motion of performing and transforming. MSPs, the transform piece is super high, right? Because it's moving very quickly. And what Oasis brings to the table is that it makes sure, it puts in place the right structure so that you can look at the metrics of the company and you can all agree, everybody that is in the company can all agree that when they look at a number and that number is wrong, they can all agree that it's wrong. Okay? So there's no discussion.
Is that because there's reliable data and analytics?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, reliable data, analytics, but there's also a group understanding how should the business look like. So that's one of the pieces. And the second piece is that you become really good at pursuing your goals and your strategic objectives. So if you want to transform, that necessarily is a change project. You need to change things that are in the company. And if you're not good at pursuing goals, you're never going to make it. That's the reason why I think it's like 90% of any initiative, when you have a strategy that is very well laid out and you know where you want to go, falls on its face because of execution.
Right.
Because you don't have a good execution engine. Right?
Yeah. And strategic planning, the process of establishing goals and strategic priorities that underpin those things that you want to achieve. From my perspective, I don't think that is very complex. It's the execution that takes courage and tenacity. That's where things, that's where the wheels fall off the bus, right?
Yeah, this is pretty much like the the Serenity Prayer.
You need to know the difference.
Right, exactly. We repeat this constantly, right? You have a vision, that's where you want to go, right? That's where you kind of like want to trend. You have a strategy, which is your roadmap on how to get there. And then you have the execution piece, right? Any of those three pieces is wrong, then something's not working.
The whole thing
right?
will crash.
It's right, and it's because even the vision can be wrong. You could be delusional, in pursuing a vision that cannot be achieved, right? Or you can have the wrong strategy that will not get you there. Or you can just not executing. You're just not going through the motions to get to where you want to go.
Right.
So any of these can go wrong. That's why we call it, by the way, OASIS. We also call it strategic planning and execution practice. That's how we call it.
And that's all part of the business operating system. Having that framework, right? So that you can execute. Is that where the connection between OASIS and an effective business operating system? Is that where they come together?
That's what it is. So OASIS is a shorthand for our OneAccord operating system. It's OASIS, right?
Right.
So and that system has all these components that we have talked about. It has a piece of developing strategy, helping you pursue your goals, putting in place the right structure, who reports to whom, who's responsible for what are the right metrics, and finally, what is the cadence, how we push forward this thing, right? One more thing about OASIS is that we designed OASIS at OneAccord in a way that is modular. And the way we do that, and that's what makes it really powerful for this specific topic of managed service providers, and is that we can look at specifics of an industry or a business and have something that addresses those specifics and plug them into OASIS. So OASIS is the engine that executes, but we may come up, in the case of an MSP, for example, that we need to go through an effort on improving their services delivery. That project of improving their services delivery becomes the strategic objectives for OASIS, and now they can execute on it, you see? Mm-hmm. So we help everything, it becomes wholly rounded and it keeps pushing things forward.
And it's really about customization and meeting the client based on their needs and their objectives, what it is they're trying to accomplish. Okay, yes. Absolutely brilliant. And I've also heard you advocate, Huba, for vertical industry focus. And I can only imagine there may be some in our audience that think that real vertical industry focus might possibly be limiting in their practice. Talk about that a little bit.
It is. So it is limiting, right? I just had a conversation with one managed service provider who said, that doesn't work for me, right? But now, here's the thing. They are already at 70 million. They are something is working so for them. They can cover a variety of industries. But here's the deal. The managed services, IT managed services industry has been going through a consolidation process. There's it's a business that is very, very good for doing a roll up, right? What we call a roll up. So a private investor, a private equity group comes in, buys one MSP, buys another one, etc. And these businesses operate usually locally, right? So they, one covers one area, one covers another area. You put them together, now they have a regional coverage. But that's great, right? And they gain economies of scale, whatever. So that works really well for a private equity investor, right? But that has been going on for I would say about 5 years already, right? Or even more. And so the days where you could just spin up a managed service provider in your city and you would get bought out by a private equity group just because you have that area, those days are probably gone. There's not much value in that anymore because, we already went through that consolidation process. But there are two dynamics that are going on that could help, okay, for an MSP that is starting out or is trying to find their bearings. And one of them is if you specialize in a vertical market. So what I mean with that is you provide IT services, but you specialize, for example, I'm going to use some very simple examples, but you can extrapolate these to whatever, right? But let's say you specialize in attorneys' offices or dental offices, right? I have to go to the dentist, by the way, in an hour or so. So that allows you to learn what are the specific needs of those businesses. What is the software that they use? Where do they need that monitor that the patient is looking at when they are drilling their molars, whatever, right? So you learn those things, and now you can provide a better service for those customers.
You become a subject matter expert in that vertical field.
You become a subject matter expert.
Yeah.
Right. And that allows you, that's in the second piece that I was going to tell you about, which is intimately connected with this, is that businesses are, as the technology becomes more and more plug and play, we say, right, easier to implement, etc., more and more companies are letting go or at least reducing the size of their IT services department, the internal IT services, right? And they are using someone who is external, right? So
that can be more cost effective, right?
Right, exactly. But what does this mean for the managed service provider, or in fact for any services provider for that company, is that they don't have a counterpart at the client, at the customer, who speaks IT, because they done away with them, right? So if you speak IT and you're talking to the line of business manager, the owner, the salesperson, whoever it may be, you're just not speaking the same language.
Right.
So to be effective as a service provider, as a managed service provider, as anything, right? You need to learn the lingo and what are the pain points, what are the needs of that person on the other side at the customer. And that person no longer speaks IT. So the only way you're going to learn that, you cannot learn possibly, everything about a car dealership, a dentist office, an attorney's office, all these different things. You can't. There's just too many different things.
And industries evolve.
Right. So you have to focus on some. Now, that doesn't mean that you focus on one. This is where people get it wrong, right? You may focus on 5 or whatever.
But you still have specialty expertise in those 5 verticals.
Yes. And you can have, people in your organization as well as you grow who are specialists in each of these areas, and you continue to grow like that, right? So that makes much more sense in today's market. That's the main thing that I was advocating for the vertical industry.
Well, right? I completely agree with you. And as a marketing, branding, and positioning nerd, I believe that it's much more difficult to distinguish a generalist from a noisy space. But when you have vertical expertise, now, see, that's the demand side. But on the supply side, I think it works as well. The managed service provider is the supply. And I think that specific expertise on both the demand and supply side makes it far easier for any business to more effectively differentiate them from the noise in their space. Does that
Absolutely.
make sense?
Yeah, it
So
makes you different.
I could
Yeah.
not agree with you more. I really like that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
kind of to that point, we're talking about our audience, and our audience are typically SMBs, small, medium-sized business. We have a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs. So you talked about coaching about 15
Mhm.
minutes ago. So uh, why does a small business owner operator, why do they need a coach? How are they going to specifically benefit?
This is actually a pretty challenging piece, and especially with IT solutions providers, because these are very, very smart people, right? Very, very smart. And as a fellow, I think I'm smart person, or I used to be, we tend to think that we know it all, right? And
That's a danger.
and that we can duke it out, right? And we can do it ourselves, right? And things like that. It's challenging, right? But the thing is, there's no way for one person to have the same standpoint as another person. I'm an amateur photographer as well, and I learned this, long time ago. There's no way to take the same photograph. Two people cannot take the same photograph because they are standing on different places.
Right, different
And
POV.
their angle is different.
Right.
So you cannot, it's impossible. That's what we bring in with coaching, helping people have another perspective.
Good
But we
analogy.
are also, as you just said it, you're marketing and branding nerd. We are operating model and strategy nerds. We read all the books. We're fascinated about this thing. We look at it, from different angles, whatever, and we learn all the different things. And we are eager to bring in the best solution for every single client, right? The coaching aspect brings another piece. This is something that's also a cliche, right? It's when you say it's lonely at the top. And the thing is, the business leader many times faces this problem, and it's because it's very hard to have an agenda-free conversation with someone. People always want something from you.
Sure.
Right? And that's what the coach brings to the table, is an agenda-free conversation, where it's like, you're already paying me for my services. It doesn't matter what I say. So I'm going to tell you the truth. And that goes back to OneAccord's values, which is, truth and compassion, right? So it's even when you are holding a meeting, and trying to develop your strategy, trying to develop, working through a hard problem, the fact that you have someone in the room who is helping you make sense of things, but also takes off the responsibility from the leader to lead the meeting itself, right? And makes them yet another participant in the meeting. When usually when the boss is in the room, they have the strongest voice. And I don't mean that literally. I mean it, when they say something, it holds a lot of weight, right? The facilitator or the coach in those occasions, it tones that down and allows the CEO, the boss, whatever, sit in the back of the room and just listen, right?
And those are the smart leaders that listen more than they talk.
Right. Yeah, there you go. So coach is super important, right? And it also, it will take you to the next, in this effort of performing and transforming, will hold you accountable for your performance, and will also guide you through that transformation process.
I'm a big fan of coaches. I've even hired personal coach. Well, not, business coaches for me as an individual. So I believe in that. And I've always used a term, I'm interested in your thought, that I think a coach provides outsider insight. And it's very objective. I just think that that's a real value to any size enterprise.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Even for individuals, right?
So we've talked a lot about managed service providers, and we've talked about OASIS and the business operating system and all that connective tissue. So different organizations have different disciplines. You can be product oriented. You can be distribution oriented. You can be marketing oriented. And this question is specific to organizations that are sales oriented. So
Right.
how do MSPs why do they need a business operating system, even if their core issue, their core problem is in sales?
I'm so glad that you brought this up, right? We just mentioned this idea of having a project and injecting it into Oasis, the operating system, right? And your operating system is your execution engine, is the way you execute change also. So we are just about to release Growth, it's called, okay? And it's
What's
not
that called
growth
again?
with a W, Growth, GROAT.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah. So it's basically a sales program, okay, for small businesses. And we concentrate highly, we have all the strategic standpoint where we can, develop how your offer looks like and all those different things, right? Help your individuals to, get trained on how to do better sales and all that. But we really concentrate is in the doing, okay, in the sales motion. There's no way for a company or for an individual or whoever it may be to have less sales if they increase their activity.
That makes
So
sense.
let me put it this way. You're selling something and you have this level of activity. If you increase your level of activity, you're not going to have less sales. It's just not possible, right? So we increase your level of activity and we use the operating framework or the operating system, the business operating system, to execute. Again, this is the execution engine, to execute on that sales transformation process. Okay. Now, MSPs in particular, right, and every business needs an operating framework, because when you are trying to increase your sales, you need to go through this transformational process. And if you don't have a good execution engine, you're just not going to get it done. That's number one. Okay. And number two is the operating framework or the business operating system affects everything in your business, not just sales.
Right.
If you increase sales, that's fine, but you can't deliver. And then if you can't deliver and you provide a level of service that is not good, your sales are going to plummet again, right? Your reputation is going to go to the floor, etc. So the simplest framework to think about this is that every business has three functions, and every title, the thing that it's in your card, your business card that reads, that has 3 lines, it's a long title. You can summarize it. It either works in 3 departments. One is you get work, you do work, and you manage. Right? So if any title in a company can be classified in one of those 3 departments. Okay. So if your get work piece increases too much, then your do work piece gets challenged, right? So you gotta kind of like do them at level and increase them at the same time. And the manage piece also, in the manage piece, you have things like accounts receivable, right? So if you're selling a lot and you're delivering well, but you're not collecting, that's not good either. So you got to kind of like grow them all at the same time. And that's what an operating framework helps you.
Yeah, being out of balance literally can put you out of work. And it certainly denigrates the customer experience, and your retention and referrals go out the window. So I've got one more question before I want to talk about how our audience can connect with you, Huba. What about the other side of the equation? We've been talking about MSPs, managed service providers. We've been talking about the OneAccord business operating system, Oasis, and how that connects to the strategic plan and then takes it to the execution level. Talk about everything that we discussed, or the relevant parts, from the technology vendor's perspective.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because the two have to meet, right? And this comes from this has very much to do with what I did for 20 something years in corporate America.
That was after
right?
you sold your
Is
business.
yeah.
Okay.
No, that was after. Yes, exactly. The main thing is this: if you are at a technology company, a large technology company, you're trying to get to that 75%. You're trying to get to that channel so that you can take your product and deliver it, to the market. 75% of the market goes through partners, right? So you want to get to the partner. But here's the thing that a few people understand. The people who are in partnerships and are in channel and have been there for a long time, they know this at their core, okay? But many people that are not in that space don't understand this, and is that the partner has a choice, okay? The MSP, the managed service provider, the VAR, the systems integrator has a choice when they select a vendor. And one of the things, that they do is they actually try to restrict the quantity of vendors that they have, and they try to make a thoughtful choice on who they carry. So as a technology vendor, you need to make yourself attractive to these managed service providers, VARs, systems integrators, so that they actually take you to market. And the way you make yourself attractive is not just by having an excellent product. That's just one piece of the equation. But you also have to do two more things. One is you have to make your product and your business model profitable for the partner. It's not a middleman, as we call it sometimes, right? It's not like they are in there in the middle, just triaging and taking a product and taking some money out of the equation. That's not how it works. They
like
actually
the middle of a
deliver
distribution
some value,
channel.
right?
Yeah.
They actually add value to the product. The product that the end user consumes is very different from the one that the vendor creates. So they have to add that value. And that's why they earn some money, right? So you need that in the equation, right? That's one of the pieces. You have to make it profitable so that they can deliver that value. That's one piece. And the second piece, you have to be extremely good at what we say, having ease of doing business. You have to be easy to do business with as a technology vendor. Hands down, any partner, any managed service provider, any VAR, if any other thing equal, they're going to choose the vendor who is easy to do business with, because it means less cost for them. So how do you do these things? Well, you figure out what's in the market, and then you build what we call a partner program. Okay. And partner programs have these components, right? That, I personally been involved with them for more than 2 decades, in different capacities, designing them, working as a consultant for other companies, etc. But we can definitely at OneAccord help you with that as well. Now, this is a different engagement, right? It's not Oasis. It's not, you probably have other ways of executing that are not, Oasis is not the right choice for you at this moment, but it's still the same idea. It's you come up with a strategy, you figure out what the market needs, and at the end of the day, you have to execute on it. So that's how the two relate.
Excellent. And just for some of our audience members that might not know what a VAR is that a value-added reseller?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
That's it. You got it.
Perfect. So before we help our audience connect with you and that, did you, Huba, did you have anything else you wanted to share beyond what we've already covered before we close out our episode?
Yeah, I think that, you can follow me on Substack. That's one of the things. My name is very particular, so you're going to find me, right? And reach out to us over either social media or through our, our website. Now, here's the one thing. We are in front of, and this may sound again like a cliche, right? But we are in front of unprecedented times. Okay, the way technology and business is changing is next, breakneck speed, and you have to be prepared for what's coming. I personally, sometimes, depending on which side of the bed I wake up, I wake up either tremendously scared of what's coming or super optimistic, right? It could be either or.
And they can be based on the exact
let's
same
try to
condition.
make it the latter. Okay. Let's try to make it the latter. The one thing that I can say is that if, as owners of a small business, you stand a very good chance at continuing to deliver value to your customers in the local area where you operate or in the niche where you operate. Technology is going to help you. It's going to make you stronger. It's going to make you faster. But you probably stand a very good chance of doing that. And it's certainly one of the engines, if not the most important engine of the economy, right? We talk about the stock market,
right?
In reality, small business is what moves the country.
And in terms of connecting with Huba, I just want to do the spelling because it is a unique name. You're not going to have to go through a long list, but first name Huba, Huba, that's Huba. Last name is Rostonics, that's Rostonics. And so you can put that, you can Google it, you can type that into your LinkedIn search, but great ways. And of course, you can also connect with Huba through the OneAccord website.
That's right.
OneAccord, all one word, .co, not .com, just .company. So, well, I'm going to conclude by Huba. You're right. We've tried a couple times to connect. Our schedules are kind of nuts, but I am just so thrilled that we did. Huba has forgotten more about IT and technology solutions than 99.9% of any person I've ever met will ever learn. So just a great expert, and I so appreciate your time and talent. And I'm going to conclude by thanking our audience for joining the Value Factory podcast presented by OneAccord. I'm your host, Andrew Ballard, thanking Huba Rostonics. Once again, everybody have a great day. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.